the Roundtable on breaking silos and collaborating on new evidence for women's entrepreneurship. Uh, while we wait for a couple of more people to join us, thought we could start with a quick round of introduction with everybody, since I know a lot of people know each other, but it would be good to have like a 30-second introduction where you can just introduce yourself, the organization, and a quick brief on the work that you're doing in women's entrepreneurship. So I'll start with Seema, if that's okay.
I'm Seema Bhaskaran, and I work with TRI and look after gender and inclusion. So presently working on working with NRLM for developing institutional mechanisms called the Gender Resource Center, and especially Madhya Pradesh, and also working in the area of trying to work in the area of women and entrepreneurship, and also working on gender and decentralization. So these are some broad areas which we are trying to expand.
Hi, I'm Kalpana Pant, and I am leading an organization, Chaitanya. We have been working in the SHG Federation space since 1991. We have now 45 such federations across Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, 125,000 plus women. And almost 95% are self-reliant, sustainable, without any government support. Most of it their own savings and the way they rotate it in the federations. And one of the key areas when women get together is talk about violence against women. So we have an institutional structure in place now, which NRLM is also calling GRCs. So we have that in Maharashtra and in Chhattisgarh. Now we are planning to do it in Madhya Pradesh as well. And the third important component is women's economic empowerment, for which access to finance, of course, through SHG federations, but enterprise development. And women have, so we call it collectives for individual enterprise, how collectives can play an important role. And we have a brand called Kala Maitri that women are running on their own, which is apparel's brand. Thank you.
Thanks, Kalpana.
Sure, I can go next. Hi, I'm Diksha Radhakrishnan. I'm with ID Insight, where I lead ID Insight's data unit, which looks at large-scale data generation and verification. As part of this team, we're looking at various ways we can address gender data gaps, both with regard to looking at administrative data systems and ways we can actually support greater gender inclusivity in those data systems, but also looking at ways we can generate missing data on women. One of the big ideas that we have right now is looking at ways we can create household level data on unpaid care work and other kind of gender indicators. So I'll pass it on.
Hi everyone, I'm Shagun. I'm the Asia Regional Director for Co-Impact. Co-Impact is a philanthropic collaboration which focuses on locally led organizations that are doing systems change work. And women's economic empowerment is a core pillar of our work. So very glad to be here.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm Gayatri. I head the work for Imago Global Grassroots in India. So our main pillars of work are around women collective enterprises, one on implementation of women collective enterprises and to scale them through government systems or currently through the SRLM ecosystem. And another pillar of work is around generating evidence of what works and what doesn't work through an approach that we call adaptive evaluation. So that's our area of work.
Hi everyone, I'm Ritika Gupta. I'm here representing CMS. I particularly look at the evidence work within Catalyst Management Services, but here to talk about the overall work that Vritti, Swasti and the Catalyst Group does in the space of women economic empowerment. We work with women-owned nano, micro enterprises, women farmer collectives, and we also work at particularly I have also leading the NRLM evaluation piece, the NRETP work. We also look at OSF and other IFC studies, farm, non-farm, across So here to talk about the experience. We also work with Walmart on working with 50,000 MSMEs, out of which 8,000 are women MSMEs. So
hello, everybody. I'm Arshia. I'm a rural development specialist with the World Bank. So World Bank here in India has a huge portfolio, and one of the key players that we work with is the Ministry of Rural Development and other ministries like Ministry of Agriculture, who are very interested in, one of the key mandates is to set up enterprises, right? And most of them do turn out to be women's enterprises, especially when we talk about Ministry of Rural Development's NRLM program. So I lead the work from the bank side with them, and I also work on farm enterprises with the Ministry of Agriculture.
Thanks, Archia. Over to you, Krishnan.
Hi everyone, I'm Krishnan. I'm from Udhyam Learning Foundation. At Udhyam, I run the Udhyam Vyapar initiative, where we work with nano entrepreneurs, typically earning below 25,000-30,000 rupees a month. And primary target segments being rural entrepreneurs and street vendors, with two specific outcomes in mind. One is income uplift for the entrepreneurs, and the second outcome we look at is how do we make them more entrepreneurial in behavior or more enterprising in behavior, so that the income uplift can be more sustainable in the long run. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishnan. I think we've covered everyone. Just setting the agenda for today, and then I'll hand over to Aarti and Yamini to take us through a short 3 to 4 slides explaining why we are here. We open with setting the context, and then we have an open floor discussion on 4 key points that we want to uncover today, right? First, starting with a title for the roundtable. What are the gaps in evidence for women entrepreneurs, and how do we create new evidence and new data across different enablers and levers for women entrepreneurship in India? Parallelly, also taking stock of what is the current data available on the ecosystem. Second, and a very important aspect for us to understand, and something that's not been talked about a lot, is decoding the private sector value chains to enable more market access for women entrepreneurs. The third piece that we would touch upon and we would talk about in our more open discussion is the policy ecosystem and the enabler ecosystem, which includes your government policies, schemes, incubators, accelerators. How do we create that ecosystem of support for women entrepreneurs, and what are the levers that we need to unlock there to increase the scale and tailored services that can reach to different segments? And the fourth is translating, how does this support actually translate to real-time growth of these enterprises and creation of new enterprises? And then we move on to actually talking about how we can collaborate further and explore different models of partnerships that can either emerge in this room or in the ecosystem at large. So handing over to Yamini to take us through the context.
So I think rather than build up to it, we'll sort of lay out what our ambition was. And it's something that conversations that Aarti and I and a few of our collaborators have just been having for several months now, which is one, the problem statement is, we haven't had any recent data on women's entrepreneurship in India, like across, even if we take official data from the 6th economic census, which was 2014, right? So we've had a really big gap in understanding what's going on. Second, a number of organic trends and organic changes have hit us in the ecosystem. Increased digitization, e-commerce platforms, and especially the kind of highway and rails built by ONDC seems to be a huge transformative opportunity. Meanwhile, we have the gap between where the kind of women we work with and care about and these platforms is huge. That chasm is very, very huge. Third sort of piece is the digital finance piece. I think there's huge changes happening in that ecosystem. But the paradigms and the kinds of segments and categories that they've worked with are very, very traditional. So based on revenue size, based on the framework of MSME, we continuously have provider institutions, so financial providers, market providers, solution providers, sort of working with these very broad paradigms. And that entire sort of population of self-employed women who are now sort of being seen, the identities being recast a little bit in terms of nanopreneurs, but there is a self-employment and then there is a nanopreneur piece, which are very distinct also. So I think so these organic sort of changes in understanding how are women earning their livelihoods, what are the kinds of forms of self-employment, and what is that ecosystem looking like. There's a huge shift, but we don't have a single source. We don't even have multiple sources of understanding that broad landscape. Forget single source. I think single source is a bit ambitious, but even sort of trying to take stock of what's going on, how are women connecting to these kinds of new opportunities, which are the intermediary organizations that already exist, like TRI Chaitanya, also from the government side, the SRLM, NRLM sort of systems. But there's also other kinds of intermediaries who enter that system, who are helping with financial linkage, who are helping with creating platforms, who are trying to platformize this whole system so that there's greater access. So I think there's a very diverse sort of set of shifts that have happened in the last few years. And I think that's on the next slide, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But I think I think this conversation started for us where we said and then the policy piece. Sorry, let me not forget that. That's like the biggest for us, which is when we think of policies, we think of schemes, right? And this morning, like Access led a really fantastic conversation talking about the fact that we haven't had a women's entrepreneurship policy. We don't have a national framework for this, and it's something that Access will sort of is sort of spearheading. Is this a possibility, and can they convene many of us to sort of be part of that as they lead this effort? But that is something that it really makes you sit up, right? I think even our basic national policy on women is quite dated. So I think there's a policy framework that needs updating. But there's also all of these other things that are happening, which are, the data ecosystem. What is this data protection? That's like a very basic question. So access, availability, access, use is the second sort of, and scale is the sort of more internal conversation. But even at the outset, what are the kinds of protections we're talking about? Do we even understand it? And do we even invest in our communities understanding this? And how do we do that? So there's a whole regulatory environment that's also shifting. And we are not able to keep up with it as the set of actors who work with women entrepreneurs and with grassroots women. So I think this is where we sort of said, okay, Satwa sort of has worked quite a lot on market access and linking with value chains. For Udayti, access to finance is a very, very critical piece. Data and evidence is sort of common to both of us, but we also recognize we are hardly the only actors in the space, nor are we the only sort of advanced and sort of visionary thinkers in this space. So I think this whole conversation has taken a couple of months, and then we finally approached Access and said, listen, you're having this livelihood summit. Could we use that space because you're bringing the best of people there already? Could we have a little bit of a dialogue to see what is happening in this? How are organizations understanding this, and what are the gaps both in terms of evidence as well as in the policy ecosystem and in market access? So literally taking that data, policy and solutions piece and looking at finance, capacity, markets, right? Like the very traditional framework, but we know that there's a lot happening around this. Can you go 2 slides back? So I think one more slide back. So the first step we started out with, or like the ambition, I think this literally happened in the last few days where Aarti and I happened to be in the same room or same call. Somebody else didn't attend, which was great because we got some one-on-one time. And we said, what do we want to do with this? I think creating data, putting another report out there, of course one could do, but what does that do, right? So creating a platform, okay, then what kind of platform are we platform people really? So I think we thought what we want to do is create change. What we want to do is create that consolidation, create the kind of change, and be very outcome driven in terms of what is the change in policy we need and what's the kind of solutioning that needs to happen. And what better way of doing it than just bringing together who are active in the space and really beginning a dialogue. So this is a very short time slot we have, but we really wanted to make sure that we at least kick off the dialogue and see, is this interesting? And what we thought would be most powerful is not our voices, but actually the voices of the women that we work with, but in very targeted ways bring together the gaps as well as the access. How are women accessing the world of digital finance? What is happening on that? Where is digital skilling helping entrepreneurship or even like self-employment? What are some of these pockets of innovation, and also what are some of the bigger gaps that we are actually reckoning with, and how can we put that together in a bit of a both, I can, given the time of year, time of day, time of year, definitely thinking of some of the ways in which this can reach both the policy as well as the political audience is very important. At the same time, having a longer ramp and sort of saying, how do we just in the next 3 to 5 years, what's that change we want? What do we want the government to do, or what do we want private sector actors to do? Are we clear? And can we bring some of these ideas together? And so therefore we thought, I'm a very traditional survey person, but I think we sort of ideated ways in which we could really bring a more collaborative effort together, where the voices of women can be brought together, not by any external mediator, but actually trying to find ways that one can bring some of these issues into the fore. So with that, I'll hand off to Aarti in terms of how we'll do this.
Thank you so much, Yamini. And, while we were, the vantage point that I have the good fortune of working with is also a lot more on the business and private sector side. And nearly every company today has a mandate and a policy to say in the next few years, how do I integrate more women into the, into the ecosystem as business and not as philanthropy, which is like a project, right? But at the same time, probably the where we have the least evidence is how is that kind of integration happening. The few programs that we've been part of, we can see that this is such a long and arduous journey, and no one at the corporate level, the intention is great, but the clarity and how do we proceed is really something that we are finding our feet as we are sort of walking the path. So therefore, that's one. Two is, I was just on a panel before this in the NASSCOM summit with Dr. Chintan Vaishnav. Apparently, there are 1,050 incubators in India, 450 of those just under the Atal Innovation Mission. So that's a heck of a lot of support ecosystem that exists today. And just 2 seconds after that, we had a conversation with somebody who's working with the UNDP program, but bringing in a very non-gender lens way of looking at incubation and mentoring support. So how does that counter with what women need? So therefore, sorry, I'm just going to request if we can. Yeah, thank you. So just trying to see if there's a way to look at what data we can get from the incubation mentoring support ecosystem, given the prolific growth of these ecosystems. Only Andhra Pradesh has over 140 incubators, right? So some of these are not even probably getting listed. So can we actually see, first start with women's voices across these areas and provide ecosystem actors, including incubators and accelerators, private sector actors, policy, so that we build it consistently, right? And that's the other thing that we're saying. A report, has a certain shelf life, but we'd like this to be an effort that keeps accumulating over time. And in a collaborative way, as we find more evidence, more pathways, how do we sort of keep it accumulated? So we really want to make it a hub. That's our vision. Like new evidence, right? Like let's go where the gaps are the highest. Let's look at interactive dashboards. We do this thing at Satva called the State of CSR, which literally drills down in every district, which are the companies that are working, what are they giving to, and so on, and makes collaboration a lot more, coherent and very concrete. So taking profiles of women and learning from greats like the kind of Hans Rosling, his initiative and so on, to see if we can build more meaningful profiles and case studies, and of course have various different ways in which we can have this evidence used and built upon by the ecosystem. So really the biggest foundation of this is collaborators in this room, and already I was counting over 100,000 entrepreneurs in your introduction statements. So clearly we are here between collective and individual entrepreneurship, working with so many interesting different segments of entrepreneurs. So it'd be lovely to get a few ideas to see how we can collaborate as we go forward. So over the next 45 minutes, and would love to over these areas where we think there's probably the most potential in collaborating to produce new evidence. Your thoughts overall, where do you see the gaps, and then also drilling it down into areas we really want a lot of copious input that we can take back, work upon, and come back to this group. Thank you. So over to you, Soumya, to take forward the group.
Hello, so sorry for being late. Made quite the entrance, I see. My name is Emma Stanton, and I'm with the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, which is the philanthropic hub of the company. And in India, we invest in helping women small businesses access the market's capital, skills, and know-how they need to become more financially resilient and grow.
Hi, I am Chetna Gala Sinha. I'm a founder of Mandeshi Mahila Cooperative Bank, which operates in Maharashtra, and Mandeshi Foundation, which operates in Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Gujarat. And I'm delighted to share with you that this year we'll be impacting 1 million women entrepreneurs. So this is a celebration which I want to share with all of you. And we just had a great session with the support of, at NASCOM, but there are a lot of supporters like MasterCard and others who have been able to make this journey happen. Yeah, thanks.
Just a quick introduction. I'm Meenakshi and I work at Access Development Services. I lead the gender vertical at Access, and Access is a national level livelihood support organization. We work in around 12 states. We pursue a 3-tier strategy where we work on ground implementation of projects. We also do capacity building of capacity builders. We work very closely with government, non-government, bilateral, multilateral organizations. And at the ecosystem level, which is tier 3, we do these flagship summits that some of you would be aware of. One of them is the Inclusive Finance India Summit, which just completed it 20 years. And then the Livelihoods India Summit. The third program, which has just as like it's part of our portfolio, is a GATE-supported program called Udyam Mahila, which is looking at how do you build pathways for greater participation of women in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. How do you influence policy and provide policy support to the government? And we are very happy that Udayti and Satwa have taken this initiative, and we would be very happy to support them with whatever we could. So thank you so much for taking time out, and over to Aarti.
Yeah, thanks so much, Meenakshi. And I think that such a rich gathering would not have been possible without the support of Access today. So thank you so much for building this ecosystem for us to be able to harness. And just for the okay, sorry, can you bring up the presentation? Just for the benefit of Mandeshi, Emma, recapping what we laid out as a quick vision. Yeah. Great. So, just starting with saying that we'd love to build collaboratively an evidence hub which can offer new evidence on areas that we have been missing so far, because in the last few years, the entrepreneurship ecosystem for women and the nature of women's entrepreneurship has grown in several different new ways, which aren't yet reflected in the kind of evidence that we have out there, particularly with reference to the kind of financing, needs and what solutions in terms of private sector integration and gender integration and value chains in big business and private sector. In terms of while we have a lot of data around policies, what is the data around uptake of these policies, and what do we need? We don't have an overarching women entrepreneurship policy, for example, and the nature of ecosystem support. There are over 1,000 incubators counted in India so far. So what is the nature of support being offered? It's that offered to women. What is a continuum of collective and individual enterprises, and what support do they need. So these are some of the things that we want to focus on. And second is we want to be able to look at it as a hub and not as a report with a certain shelf life. So therefore 50,000 is really the first ambitious target, but Chetna ji just said we work with 1 million women, and you've elevated the possibility of what this can be by much, much higher. So we'd love for this to be an evidence hub that we can keep sort of building on collaboratively, interactive dashboards, building pen profiles of these women really and what their entrepreneurial journeys have looked at, indexes where we can go into what the ease of doing business has been like and so on, and then offer useful information to the entire ecosystem that's working on women enterprise, and have more collaborators join that ecosystem that's working with women enterprises. So that's the idea. With that, I'll give it over to Soumya to go back to our discussion. These are the 5 areas we really wanted to gather more inputs on. Soumya, over to you.
Thanks, Aarti. Just in the interest of time, we thought that we could open the discussion rather than going topic by topic, starting with our baseline that we want to talk about, right? Like the current evidence in the women entrepreneurship ecosystem, and what does the continuum of these women enterprises look like? And while there are multiple definitions of women entrepreneurs across micro, nano, small, how do we segment these better to actually create tailored evidence for each of these segments, and utilize that to create better policies and better programming? So just opening with that, and then we delve into finance, private sector policy, etc. Opening up with Shagun, Diksha, or anybody else who wants to go first.
When we've done work around like generating evidence about with Imago in terms of how do we look at my bad. So when we've done work with Imago and Seva and others on looking at what kind of evidence do we generate around women collectives or women enterprises, and looking at those profiles, I think the question really comes in here in terms of both the understanding the measurement frameworks that we want to be exploring, right? So at one level, there's the basic economic outcomes that we think of in terms of income earned or, savings increased and of those form. And then there's a whole set of empowerment-based indicators that we look at, which there's still a lot of discussion on, and I don't think we've still come to an alignment on what should those really look like, and how do those set women up for the right entrepreneurial journey beyond just an immediate engagement of like spending, hours in like paid, getting having paid hours, or looking at how are you engaging beyond the household care work. So I think that's a space that we would also be excited to learn from others in terms of how do you think about the data points that you're looking at, and what is it that really kind of maps that journey out, and spending time to think about what are those measurement frameworks that really need to be conceptualized for us to be able to track the right indicators and move beyond any kind of default thinking around this, and make sure we're actually capturing the lived experiences of women and what that looks like.
So I was just looking at India's rank as 57 out of 65 countries in the index of women entrepreneurs. MasterCard had done that survey, and I think it highlighted that I think 94% or so are single women run enterprises, and this is something that we are witnessing in our country, where we are working with 1,25,000 plus women, and most of our women entrepreneurs are basically service based, not manufacturing, and it's less than 10,000 rupees. So when we are looking at data and evidence, this is based on small surveys that we have done. And so there are 3 levels at which I'm looking at lack of data, and we doing too many things at the implementation level are struggling with how to do it. And I'm so happy that Satwa and Yamini are looking at a more holistic. So first of all, thanks a lot for this, because we really struggle with it in terms of decisions, and we are not able to prioritize research and data so much because day-to-day field level implementation activities are so high. So the first level is how to identify entrepreneurs, because across the country now we have a very strong collectives through NRLM, and that's a big resource for all of us. So identification. So all of us sitting here have some experience, and how especially when there are resource agencies that are interested in providing resources, they would like to know what is the eligibility kind of criteria that you have put in place. So looking at data and providing a very systematic analysis of that, I think, is the first part of information. Skilling, there is a lot of work already gone into skilling, so the level of inputs to create that enabling environment, a positive ecosystem, I think we could have some information around that as well. But I'm sure there are already a lot of agencies which are working on that, because even in the entrepreneurial space, the skilling component is quite well taken care of. The third important part, and that is the missing, the really missing gap is, okay, what after that? So everybody can claim that we conducted trainings, we did this, we did that, but did it really bring about change? And that is where I think we tried to do that through a Google form. That's what we are able to do with the limited resources we have. But looking at, okay, how many people are actually working in their enterprise over a period of time, are we able to track it? So therefore, this is brilliant that you're talking about a dashboard, because then we can see, and this is exactly what we are thinking of. We are saying every 6 months, let us collect information on some of these key parameters. One is any implements that they have started using, the equipments that they have started using, what is the kind of investment over a period of time, what are the number of people who you have started employing, what is the market that you've started accessing over a period of time, what is the income, of course, that you're generating over a period of time, and what are the expenses that you're incurring, and the markets that you've been able to access, and the range of markets also, and most importantly, use of social media. So some data which is able to capture a range of these, and I'm just saying offhand, I mean, there will be other such levels that we will have to, once we are more intensively discussing on that, to be able to say, okay, where is it that we are able to see change? So if we make an investment in this, then this is what it leads to. So to be able to come up with that kind of analysis and research through this dashboard would be great. So what leads to what, we'll be able to track better. So that's just my...
Can I come in? Sorry. Okay, no, I just wanted to get back to Soumya's question when she was talking about the continuum of women's enterprises, right? So, in our experience, of working with various states, we realize that even though Ministry of MSME has given you some sort of a classification, right? You have micro, small, medium enterprises. The category of micro is way too broad, and we all know that, right? So that's a given. But what we've also seen is that even if you want to disaggregate micro into nano, pico, subsistence, whatever you may call it, the definition differs from one state to another, and you can't really fix those parameters, right? You can't say that any women enterprise earning, say, 5 lakh will fall into the nano category in Rajasthan, and this will hold true for Tamil Nadu as well. So this is not true, right? So we've known it from our experiences. So it means that we do need to be nimble about it. We need to be flexible about it, and in our approaches also have to differ. So I think Chetna ma'am would allude to it that I think your major territory is Maharashtra, right? So when you're working in Maharashtra, their financing needs are very different from the financing needs of entrepreneurs in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, compared to women in Northeast, right? So we do need to appreciate these differences and be nimble about it. I'm not against a set framework. Of course, we need to have a set framework. Perhaps we can have indicators which will help us in classifying. But when we are classifying these entrepreneurs, we need to take care of the state context. We need to take care of the business environment they are working in, their own difficulties, challenges that they are going through, and then perhaps, do something about it. Secondly, I think we also need to understand that you can't just leave subsistence alone, right? Subsistence also needs some sort of an assistance, right? They are totally dependent on their enterprise for survival. So you just can't leave them saying that, okay, government will take care of them. Perhaps government will, perhaps government won't. We don't know. But we need to figure it out more, right? We have gradually moved away from subsistence into growth, which is okay, but we shouldn't be leaving those things behind. And lastly, I completely agree with ma'am when you said that, how do you identify growth entrepreneurs? So we struggle with it every time. And as Aarti, you mentioned that you have about 1,050 incubators in India. So as part of our National Rural Economic Transformation Program, we had an incubation component in our project, right? So we wanted to identify these growth-oriented women enterprises and try to see that how do we provide customized support to them. The biggest challenge we faced was in identification of these entrepreneurs. Even the IIMs who were assisting us, they faced challenges in identification of these enterprises. So I think some sort of collective wisdom is required on identifying this. And that's the reason why we took up a research with CMS, and I think Ritika would allude to it, that we looked at some characteristics of enterprises that have grown from the NRLM fold. But I agree that we need to broad base that research, bring in enterprises from outside the NRLM fold, because the universe is way too big for us, right? So we need to broad base the research, validate that research to figure out that how do you identify growth-oriented women enterprises? How do you provide specific kind of support to them? And then, move along the chain. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. So first, I just want to say that I have very little expertise in this area, especially compared to the all of you here. So I think, but so I am with Co-Impact, which is a collaborating funding organization, and we are supporting a lot of program partners that are working in this space. So based on my conversations and experiences with them, I just wanted to highlight a few things that also kind of fit very well with the framework that you have put together. So first is, I think a lot of us have touched upon it, is that just the heterogeneity behind this word of women's entrepreneurship is so much, and somewhere we want to have an overarching framework, and like you're talking about the evidence hub, but the point you were making about the importance of context is, so how do we marry the two, right? And this comes very similar to like when we talk about women's empowerment, like which woman, an empowered woman in Patna looks very different from an empowered girl in Delhi, right? Like, so similar thinking even for women's entrepreneurship. And here I'll add another thing, that because of this whole NRLM work that's happening, somewhere there's also a need to think about women cooperatives and women producer companies whose needs are very different from maybe this, who are not in the NRLM, SRLM fold, but are still trying to access and are again hitting the similar problems of access to finance. And with Co-Impact, we come with a very systems level approach. And one thing I've realized is that a system doesn't exist. Currently, the system is so focused on a typical male entrepreneurship, right from the type of loan documents that they need to give, the proof that they need to give that they are able. It's like almost you are swimming on against the current for the women entrepreneurs. So where can the evidence really plug into the specific needs and barriers that they have? Like their ID proofs or to get the loan is very different from a male entrepreneur, right? So that would be very interesting. And second, I would say that thing on capacity building side that keeps coming up. So there is a lot of evidence now that does show that just training, etc., is not going to make a huge difference in, and sometimes it's the mindset. There are so many things that are related. But at the same time, one thing I'm hearing is that with the rapidly changing ecosystem, the compliance needs, the audit needs are also changing so much that women are facing a lot of difficulties in keeping up with that. So capacity building, which is more geared not towards the skilling of being a good entrepreneur, but in being able to deal with these more environmentally kind of imposed constraints would be, and how do we again think of it in a systematic way, not in a siloed, because there's so many organizations doing their own thing. How do we bring this collective wisdom together would be good.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay, awesome. So yeah, thank you to Udaiti Foundation and Sattva for bringing this together. I'm really excited about this evidence hub. And RT, let's connect. I wonder if there's some things Strive community can feed into this. Maybe global evidence that we can, anyway, frameworks. So I think when we're specifically answering the question around the continuum of women entrepreneurs, something we have found to specifically answer your question around like, what does a growth-oriented women entrepreneur look like, and how are we kind of defining that? What we have found globally is that a propensity to adopt digital is often a really strong predictor of that growth mindset, right? And I think there's so many kind of like cultural and systemic barriers that can impact a woman's propensity to adopt digital. Like, I mean, smartphone ownership in itself is a big challenge. But when we, kind of address those pieces, because we can't address everything, but like once we've addressed that, like those systemic pieces, and we really boil it down to what does that growth-oriented women entrepreneur look like, I really think digital is key. So how can we look at that psychographic measure and then think about things like adoption to digital as something that we're capturing in this evidence hub? And again, even broader than that is that psychographic piece, right? Like, I think we can't just go with demographic data. We can't just go with regional cluster sector level data. Like, we really need to get down to these psychographic questions for this to be super powerful. And I think just for the sake of time, instead of maybe waiting for the other questions to be answered, some things that I'd like for this evidence hub to consider are the intersectionality of things like care and what that means for a woman entrepreneur. This is something we're starting to explore in our global Strive Women programming and starting to test some innovative models there. But that's more implementation and less evidence building, and it's not India specific. So I'd love to see what that could look like. And then, of course, I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up inclusive climate action and how we're understanding the impacts of climate on women entrepreneurs. I think this is going to have there will be some, of course, acute geographic considerations when we're looking at India. But I really think there's an opportunity here for us to think about what are the data points we can collect to start to build that picture. Because, like, I mean, CGAP will tell you that there's a paucity of research. Women's World Banking has said there's a paucity of research. Like, maybe this is our opportunity to address that and say, like, okay, how are we thinking of the intersection of climate and gender, and then throw in finance as well, because why not?
I'll just like to add to what Arsha said. And also what Emma alluded to in terms of technology adoption. I think beyond technology, it is the sort of a savviness or an entrepreneurial mindset, which could mean for a rural entrepreneur to, be looking at expanding a customer base, innovating in smaller ways of having more vendors. It could be, smaller additions to the business that she has made in the last couple of years. So we found that is, one broad indicator that truly differentiates a growth oriented entrepreneur as compared to including technology. I mean, I know that there was a woman who who looked at WhatsApp, and they started putting their products on WhatsApp statuses within the village, and that was pretty smart. So apart from that, just looking at okay, now there is no they have a retail store, but they see that the demand for sarees is very good in the wedding season. So getting sarees outside of the village because they don't have access. So this it's beyond technology, including technology, but that market savviness, knowing where to go, what to do, or that readiness that I want to do something is one indicator. Apart from that, we also found that obviously number of employees and sales, but those are traditional economic measures. They're also very difficult for a sustenance category to differentiate between annual sales and what is from the business and what is from the household. So that's a murky territory that I don't want to get into. But we found that even if they have a seasonal employee, it's not, the employee is not throughout the year. That's again a predictor of, of the fact that they are willing to take risk, they're willing to grow, and they're willing to take what it, needs. So
I understood from the feedback which came in. I was thinking one is that when we talk of solo entrepreneurs or a nano entrepreneurs, one thing which we find in India is very common is that some are women entrepreneur because they have no choice. And that category is very different. And it's fine. I mean, we say that it's because they have no choice, they will do it. But out of that, some really come up, right? So you have that category, which is that we are in business because we don't have anything else for our source of income. That's not my by choice. I have not decided to become this entrepreneur, but I am in such a location that all these things doesn't work and only this works, so I will do that, right? In a village, can be milk vending or can be just making paneer making. So that is one category which I think we should always, and in country like India, that number is huge. In agriculture sector also, if we talk, so that is one. Another, you made a very important point of about women collectives doing some business, right? In that also, I do think that because we have to come in collective, otherwise we won't be able to do business, right? There. And in there, either we form FPOs or that comes more in the agriculture sector again. कि साथ में आना ही पड़ेगा, नहीं तो हम लोग स्केल नहीं, बिजनेस ही नहीं कर पाएंगे. Scale comes later. That is second. And third, which I mean, with Mandeshi, what how we learned from women, I'm just sharing that. We were doing business school for rural women, like, not skilling, but business school. So you do business. And the whole skilling was done in such a way that, you are not learning vocational skill, you are learning how to do business. So think of capital, think of all those. When we were doing that, we realized some women they were growing and they wanted to grow their business on scale. And then we realized, of course, now our business school cannot address this. And our team who was working with them, they also cannot address. So the experts come in. Then came chambers of commerce. So I think it will be very important from our side, when those who are working for women, to understand that journey and create those structures. So say chambers of commerce for rural women entrepreneurs. See, mainstream sector, I will give you the example of other way around. Coming from a business community, I'm just saying that how people, those who are in business, how they create their ecosystem. They don't wait for a government to do that, right? So my brothers were they set up the industry. Then immediately they set up the similar people who are doing the business, and they said, individually I cannot deal with chartered accountant, but with 15 other business people I can do. Then individually I won't be able to address the licensing issue. So similarly, then chambers of commerce can do that. Licensing, branding, packaging. Individually these women cannot. So I think we will have to go through the journey of women, and at each journey what she requires, that we have to do, right? So at collective level, maybe she requires chambers of commerce, maybe she requires FPOs, I don't know. And then the ecosystem building becomes easier. And in that journey also, I'm talking about licensing and branding and all that. And the marketing part comes later, where we also need an expertise. And what Emma was saying about the digital, I do think that that is the area where you are just jumping, and women who have never done anything but on digitally, they have just championed their business, and they have been able to make a video of their business, and so they become a role model also through that. So I was thinking regarding collecting data on, there is so much going on. How can we develop our stages of wisdom of journey of women entrepreneur? I think that would be very important, that if we collect, because I was just going through US India strategic partnership. There is a platform now. They are saying our government also is interested ki big businesses, ठीक है, but how many women are there? Even if 5,000 women are there in India, that's fine. But to understand that journey of big businesses, who are the founders, they are first generation entrepreneurs, those journey becomes very, very important, I feel. So I am, and I mean, in morning we were discussing, and Emma, about the climate. Actually, with Mandeshi recently, after this whole buzz thing is happening around climate and climate financing, we did this, that let us understand that instead of going towards climate and climate financing and how can we do those green businesses, first let us find out, maybe our women are already doing green businesses, right? And they are doing it. So we actually did this last 6 months. We are totally changing our Mandeshi business school, their whole approach. So first understand. So greening Mandeshi's business school. And because women are already doing it, it's just matter of understanding, putting it into our framework and creating that framework for women to have a very strong narrative. And then we found that our women are doing all recycling of bags, everything, but they are not using that narrative language, and their customers also do not want, or if they use that narrative, then they should get higher price also, no? So then who are their audience? I think that also becomes very important, that who is the audience of our women entrepreneur. And last question, I would say capacity building. No, I strongly feel capacity building of bankers, capacity building of policymakers, because they just does not know this world, and our women know so well. So they will be able to provide these scores and all that how bankers, like, I would strongly say Access, Udayati, Satwa, if you can create a sort of a credit score for a banker, that how are you going to build up a score for our women entrepreneur? We will give you the framework. And I honestly am saying there are so many NBFCs, there are so many bankers would like to go for that. So say for example, I'm just giving you one example. ONDC network पे हमारी Mahila entrepreneur, they are there on the network. And now bankers have also come, because priority sector lending, they want to lend to women. They also want to please the government. We are on ONDC. We have given loan to these many women. So why don't we create a scorecard for bankers, right? That, if you really want to give loan to women, then this is the scorecard. Your scorecard may not work. And why don't we come for that? I mean, morning we had that discussion of pre-credit score and all. But we have to be advisor to banker, that before even talking about credit rating, how you have to, like somebody said, right? You need there is so much change now that documents are required. Can we not create a toolkit at Chambers of Commerce with MasterCard? We have created a cool toolkit for women, which will be easier for her to take the loan. And that her toolkit will be on the digital. She will have something like DigiLocker. You have a Digi toolkit where you have all your papers. So once she registers, she has all the papers which are required for her business, and it becomes easier for her to. And one thing I also would like to say, North India में smartphone नहीं होगा, but smartphone तो आना ही चाहिए, और women should own that smartphone. Anyway, I just don't want to go on and on, but I'm just saying that it would be, when you're talking about group of, and it would be important to study that, and I would say it would be more for those people, those who are like bankers, sub policy makers, that unless ये index बदल ही नहीं सकता है unless these people learn something from our women, that wisdom they have. So that would be actually very, very important, I feel.
Krishna, we were just speaking about this like right before. Yeah.
also try to get a lot more of the possible. I think we're on a.
Yeah.
Said after 44, 45 weeks, sort of.
And I'm happy to transition into the next one, which is market. Or right. So, yeah, but just one statement before that. I think in line with what Chetna ma'am was saying, we were just discussing before this meeting started or discussion started that somebody should do a pilot on lending to women without any credit check, like without any collateral, any check, nothing at all. Just lend to 50 women and see what happens. Right, small amounts. Okay. So I think quickly moving on to the next piece, which is on the market integration value chain engagement models. I think a lot is generally talked about on both the market side, that is market access to markets, and access to finance. But I actually want to touch upon some other elements which seldom get talked about, but we found them to be very impactful in our work with rural entrepreneurs, which is aspects like, and a lot of what I'm saying is coming from our experience with working with sustenance entrepreneurs, right? And not so some of them are earning 1,000 rupees a month, right? 2,000 rupees a month, and we are trying to see how can we shift that to a 5,000. Right? So couple of things, and maybe real examples may help here, like cloth garment resellers in the village. So a lady who's buying ready-made garments for 20,000 rupees from the city, selling it in the village for 25,000 rupees. So in a month, she earns about 5,000 rupees. By just switching the supplier, by connecting the lady to a central cloth distributor, she's now able to get the same garments for 17,500. So that's a 2,500 rupees savings in the supply cost. She's still selling it for 25,000. So her profit has gone up by 50%, because instead of 5,000 a month, she's now earning 7,500 a month. So we tried, there were 4 women in the same village doing a similar kind of a business. We asked all 4 to do this. Only one of them did it. First, we said, we will take you to the supplier, we will do the negotiation for you. One of them came, acted on it, then the next 2 followed. Once they saw the results, after a month, the next 2 came and said, okay, we also want to try the same. So that's an example of how supply side interventions can be very impactful to shift income levels. I think another example I want to talk about in the value chain is, I think Chetna ma'am was also mentioning about branding support. This group of 5 or 6 SAG women were making biopesticides. They were trained by a corporate to make biopesticides, and then they were making biopesticides and filling up in used Bisleri bottles and selling it for 20 rupees a bottle in the village. When we got to know this, we asked them, why are you selling this for 20 rupees? And they were like, that's what we think the value is. When we did a market study, these were sold in the market at anywhere between 250 to 700 rupees a bottle, depending on the concentration levels of the pesticide. Then, so what we did is, so the fact we addressed here was awareness first, awareness of the outside world, that, hey, this is what it is selling for outside, right? You are selling it for 20 rupees. We worked with a local college in the same village, brought in the BBA students, gave them an internship. Can you rebrand this product? Now it's coming out in a beautiful bottle. The same biopesticide is being sold for anywhere between 100 to 200 rupees in the market. So again, the nature of engagement here was, okay, how do you create awareness of the outside world to these women so that they are bought into the idea of selling this at a higher price? And then how do you bring in help to do the rebranding from outside? So some such interventions. Overall, I feel there are 2 broad streams of work going on in India today. One is creating more women entrepreneurs. Our focus has been on working with existing women entrepreneurs because there are millions of them already available and who are earning sustenance levels. Right? So how can we shift that up has been our focus right now.
Yeah, I have a very limited experience in this area of women entrepreneurship. And because of working with the Nari Adhikar Kendras, which we had started in Madhya Pradesh, one of the aspects of the Nari Adhikar Kendra also, was looking at women enterprise, apart from entitlement access and gender intentional issues. And what I realized is that after 1 year's intense kind of work, even the it was totally skewed in favor of men. Like there were male entrepreneurs who were very forthcoming, and even the pace of learning was very different. And so one realized that even if women came in large numbers for the training, young women came in large numbers for the training, they would immediately drop out because the pace of learning was different. They did not know what were the next steps to be taken. And also there was a lot of structural barriers within the family which was not getting overcome. So then we had very exclusive kind of spaces, training as capacity building, as well as discussions to understand what kind of structural barriers, as well as barriers outside the family in public spaces related to credit and marketing. So one learning out of it was like financial inclusion did make a major dent in the way the family also looked. So one learning was that most of the women came out of they were single women, already into entrepreneurship. And so that was one area where they already were doing something on their own. Second area was that with financial inclusion, the family environment also changed, and all the other needs like the domestic support or the care work was also supported by family members. And the third area of understanding was that about marketing and raw material procurement and all this, there was a lot of dearth of understanding. And often we felt that the younger women, there were large number of younger women with high aspirations, because this is my experience is from Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and UP. So we found that there were large number of young women with high aspirations on entrepreneurship, but they had this lack of knowledge about various sectors. Like they felt that it is only the stitching or beauty parlor which can be taken up by women, and then there is no mobility beyond the block. But their aspirations were that we want to take up various other activities. So if they were exposed to around 50 kind of non-conventional sectors, they said that we want to do this, we want to even take up health, like a social innovative kind of but then how do we do it? We don't know how to go about it. So there was this high aspiration, especially among young women, that was understood, and we exposed them to various kind of enterprises across the country. Then we felt that even that isn't sufficient, so we created an online virtual platform where they interacted from people from Kerala onwards, like Kudumashri onwards, to Uttarakhand, and with a variety of sectors and people from non-conventional sectors. And because of this continuous exposure, now we see that the number of women entrepreneurs have actually skewed in favor of women than men. And this is sustained because of this continuous interactions, like online interaction. It's just online because you cannot get women from different parts of the country in different sectors to come together onto a single platform. But even this online, because they're all brought into the Nari Adhikar Kendra, there is already a space. So I feel that one is financial inclusion, and second part is sustained support, so that you don't drop down, and you have this feeling that we are not alone. There is some kind of a collective behind you. That also helps, an exposure to a variety of sectors. So these are few things which I wanted to point out. But even there is dearth of information about the kind of marketing avenues or the kind of linkages, which is one area I feel that we not have sufficient data regarding that.
Sorry, hi. Thank you so much. I think even in this room, just listening to everyone's experiences, there is so much data and evidence to be collected right here from this conversation. So I think in terms of the group here as well and the work. So I'll just take from the title itself, which is about collaborating on new evidence. One thing that I feel is that there is a lot of evidence from our work itself that can help both policy as well as us as facilitators and implementers of different work. So getting data, for instance, on what kind of market insights were there from each of our experiences of different kinds of markets that all of the women entrepreneurs that work with us serve. That itself and understanding what are, let's say, some of the key challenges from them would be very useful for for us as implementers. So for instance, we are working in the agro processing space and focus mostly on the local market as well as the nearby bigger markets. But something that we have found is that there's a lot of lack of consumer insights, especially around SHG products or SHG women, how consumers receive those products or what kind of pricing challenges there are. And just aggregating this kind of data, even for someone else who's probably working in a similar area, would be very useful as sharing or best practices or even just experience feedback amongst us. Another thing that was talked about a lot was on the financing. So I think a lot of the challenges that come are in the 10 forms that need to be filled to get one particular financing, because some of the schemes are actually pretty good and convenient, not convenient, but good in the sense of, the returns or the benefits that one can or the entrepreneur can get out of it. But when the entrepreneur actually starts trying to access that loan or trying to access that scheme, it's a whole other set of challenges. So even understanding where exactly is the bottleneck, because there are some challenges that possibly the policymakers should take into account while they're preparing the guidelines itself, why someone can access this loan, or what kind of upfront commitment one needs, or what kind of interest rates are even suitable. So getting that kind of feedback from us in terms of where are the challenges in then the women actually getting that loan, that kind of data will also be useful for us to then feed back into the policy. So maybe just me or the women that we work with saying that might not be that impactful, but getting people or getting more data would definitely be more useful. Another thing is on the gender piece as well. So I think some of the insights that we also have is women stepping out of their homes, like Seema mentioned, and Chetna ji also mentioned quite a bit on this. There are other aspects that are more societal related that need to be addressed or need to be taken care of even in our capacity building, that will probably enhance or get us enable that entrepreneur to leave her house, to do more or go beyond the village, to go beyond the block. That again, some of these insights that can come up from all of our work or what kind of bottlenecks there are, then we can start incorporating it better into the work itself that we're doing. So that would be my major sort of say here.
Yeah, just cool. I just want to add in one thing. We've spoken a lot about evidence generation. I think when it comes to ideas of evidence use, I think to what Gayatri was also mentioning, we should also be thinking about ways we can actually facilitate this data back to the users, like back to the women collective enterprises, because we see that there is a lot of data gaps in how they are making decisions, right? So to the example of they don't know what the current market rates are, so they're not pricing correctly, or they don't know they're not being able to think of collectivization across different kind of enterprises, like who do I source materials from, or who can I sell to? So I think we kind of restrain data within ourselves of both generation and use, and I think that could be, and I think of policymakers. So how do we think of that facilitation, and can there be tools that we develop that makes data really accessible and easy to use for them? Would be, I think it's just an important tangent to think about.
So because MasterCard is sitting here, I have been having this a dream, and because Yamini, you said you're into finance, just as we have Kisan credit cards, can we think of Udyami credit cards? Is it possible? And there, based on the data that we have, if we could calibrate on the levels and the loan credit limit, yeah, just in terms of if this is this scale, this is the data, then this is the credit limit. Something. Really? My God, this is something that. Excellent. So this is one thing that would really help, because the credit requirements are huge, and there are people who are anyway. But since it's already been done, I'll close that. The second,
It's not done.
it's not done. No, yeah. So let's yeah, we should. The second is in terms of finance, because there is a connect. Is in term like we talked about pricing, and the biggest failure of small enterprise is that they're not able to meet the low prices that the other players are providing, because it's not in bulk, and scaling is not so much. So economies of scale works against them. So can we have some kind of a gap funding mechanism whereby if I am producing something, because my labor and because we are organizations which will not do it at a lower cost, so the cost of labor would be more, and because it requires manual work, the costs would be say 20%, 30% higher. So can we look at like the first 2 years or 3 years of some kind of gap funding, so that they're able to address the pricing challenges, which is what is leading to a lot of failures? This is the second part of finance that I think we need to look at from a finance angle. In terms of the value chain engagements, I was thinking one of the key areas is use of machines. And we have realized that patriarchy plays a big role in women not using machines, and that really helps increase efficiency. But it's still considered to be a male domain. And there are no trainings. We talk about a lot of trainings, but no trainings on how to handle machines. So can we look at engagement there in a very systematic way? Is another area that we need to look at. Yeah. So have more.
Yeah. Just maybe once a month.
Yeah, and the next is the market in terms of engagement, and you talked about the digital part. I think that is also one of the biggest challenges of how to use digital for marketing purposes. So WhatsApp and all that. Yeah.
I think she's added some of the points, so I'll not repeat about the access to finance. But one thing that from the corporate side and from the value chain side, when we were working with Walmart, we try to onboard them on Flipkart, right? So these women entrepreneurs, the lack of understanding of the overall business, right? What it means to be onboarded on Flipkart versus what are they going to get? Like Flipkart is going to charge something, so there has to be that additional support from Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world also, which is like capacity building of the bankers. So there has to be that support coming. What does it mean? Maybe they don't want to get onboarded after that. So I think that is what we found was lacking. And I think economies of scale is a point. There is a scale barrier. So there are these sustenance entrepreneurs, but there are these urban women who are aware, but they don't know simple things. Like if you're selling a product which is fashion related and 5,000, 10,000 priced, you are not supposed to go on Flipkart or Myntra. You have to go on Tata Click, or go on a Nykaa or something. Very basic things like this are something that even urban women don't realize. So from the corporate side, if there is that additional push to get these entrepreneurs on board, to get them, I think that would be very.
Do we have the time?
I think just last 30 seconds, and then we can continue the discussion at high tea, but we'll have to just...
Okay. No, just a couple of points on some of the elements that you've mentioned here. On the ecosystem, one thing that I've always mentioned is what our entrepreneurs really lack across all, throughout the continuum, whatever it may be right now, is access to real mentorship. Mentorship just for the name of, just for the sake of it exists, but real mentorship to really guide the entrepreneurs at every step of their journey, like you were talking about, right? That is missing, and this is where most of the women entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, they fail to grow because they don't receive the right kind of advice at the right time. So, and I don't really know how to crack this mentorship aspect, because in urban areas people have been able to crack because of the proximity, because of various facilities available, but for rural enterprises we have just not been able to crack. So this is something where I know that we have failed, and if there is any evidence, or if there is anything that have worked, we would really like to learn from you and take it back to the states, because the governments are also very keen to learn about that. That's point number one. Second, when it comes to market, there is one thing that is now becoming a big hindrance, and that is GST. Because interstate it's completely okay, but the moment you link the enterprise outside the state, this is where there is a big problem. I personally dealt with it. As World Bank, we also do these conferences, right? So sometimes we think that, okay, let's get products from women enterprises to distribute as mementos. Now we have purchased. Now my accounts team is after me that these guys don't have a GST. How do we pay for them? So they have to give an undertaking that we don't have a GST. All of these things. It's a real pain. I will do it because I work with them. I'm sympathetic. I know what they go through. I will do it, but private sector won't do it, right? So
Vendor registration itself asks for some of these.
Yeah, it's just very, very cumbersome, right? So I know we have tried to simplify things. Government has tried to simplify things, but for rural enterprises, especially women enterprises, this has become a big hindrance in kind of doing business with the private sector, right? So this is another thing. On the policy side, I don't know if I'll be quoted, and if this will be attributed, but I think there is a big disconnect within the government system itself. Ministry of So Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of MSME, Niti Aayog, they don't talk to each other. I was very, I'm still very stunned that Niti Aayog hasn't really spoken to NRLM when they are making their Women Enterprise Forum, and NRLM, which has such a large array of women enterprises under them, they don't collaborate. I mean, I don't know how are we working like this. So I'm sorry to say, but this is something that it needs to be said somewhere, right? And if it's a closed door forum, so I thought that maybe I'll take the risk and spell it out.
We need an external system to come in to make internal collaboration happen.
Maybe. I think in a way we are all part of the system. So
why within? I mean, within each of these.
Yeah,
NRLM,
absolutely.
is there enough collaboration between the
Absolutely. And also, one thing that one of my colleagues often raises is that there are priority sector lending targets for banks, right? So maybe perhaps one of the ways to promote lending to women enterprises, commercial lending to women enterprises, is to ensure that there is that you tag women enterprises separately under priority sector, right? So this will ensure that women are brought into the commercial fold, and commercial lending has its own benefits. You say whatever you have to say, but commercial lending has its own benefits, right? Credit score is still a reality. You will still need a credit score, and we know that women have established themselves as credible borrowers. I don't think we have any doubts about it. So if we ensure that women are brought into the commercial fold, they have the capacity of borrowing again and again, growing their business. They don't have to rely on us or stakeholders like us, to help them every time. So some of these things I think we need to do. And one more thing that I would like to mention, which is what we learned from the field, is even individual entrepreneurs, they don't want to share their data, right? It's like any other private sector organization. They're like, okay, private enterprise, right? You go to any private organization, you ask them, hey, can you give us your turnover data? They will say, no, who are you? So similarly, I mean, just because we work with them, that doesn't give us the right to collect the data as it is, but data is still needed. So data is needed for they need to collect data for themselves. They need to collect data to get for the lending and so on, right? So that is where we need to bring in or promote digital payments, digital bookkeeping. and so that they are able to use the data and they are able to get lending based on the history that they've recorded for themselves.
I know one comment I'm laughing to say. Actually, NRLM or y'all should, or even we can think of that we will be giving you, or to tell banking sector that we will be giving you priority sector lending. So whatever NRLM has done in a banking, Mandeshi traded 90 crore before COVID by giving a priority sector lending to other banks. So it would be something very interesting, particularly for NRLM, to go for that. I'm parking this thought where we can discuss later.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think I feel like this discussion's warming up even more and more, but unfortunately we have to, sort of close the discussion. It's been super insightful. It was on your behind point. I think there's two days. So what we'll do is lots of great inputs, lots of food for thought, but very heartening to see this group already, coming together as collaborators and to hear from, I think the richness of insight in this room itself is new evidence that we should just put together. So Udaiti, Sattva and Access are very committed to seeing what are the relevant ways to kickstart this effort and then to sustain this effort. So we'll, as first steps, we'll summarize this and share it back with you all, but we'll be following up with maybe more one-on-one or smaller discussions to see how we can take forward and see. Definitely this year we'd like to, by the half of the year, I know there's the March deadline where women become suddenly very important around the corner, but sort of notwithstanding that, hoping to see if we are able to, by the middle of the year, have something that we can, that kickstarts this hub and then sort of keep accumulating on it. So, hold us to it, and we'll definitely be coming back to you, all of you, for support as we go through this. Thank you all so much for giving 90 minutes of your time today, to share your experiences.
Can I make a small request before we close?
Yes.
Is it possible to have an initiative after this through which all of us can actually put together what's working for us in one central place?
That's a great.
Right. These are things that are working well for us with women entrepreneurs, so that each of us can learn from each other. And a lot of them may be replicable in multiple places.
Yeah. We can take that and say that, can we come up with a way to share it so that it becomes structured? Ramini, over to you. Just closing that again, just adding my thanks, but great interjection, Krishnan. I think because for us, evidence is not just abstract data, right? I think the evidence is the way at least we sort of think about it. I think we used it as a catch-all term, but it is to bring in experience. It is to bring in best practice, good, maybe even model building could be done, because one needs to also test solutions and plug some of these gaps. So I think that was one. And the second, I think the idea of bringing a collaborative together is also to think that it's not Udaiti and Sattva that will be the author of some abstract report, right? If we were all to come together, what would our priorities be? They might be short-term, long-term, medium-term ones that are around policy. It could be just around market access. It could be about an unlock. It could be about knowledge sharing. So I think just having 2 or 3 more rounds of these conversations will also help us get a little more refined in terms of what does this hub look like, who do we want to bring together, and how do we want to actually work together in a way that does not burden anybody, but also put some of the onus on us to sort of build out some of these pieces. So with that, thank you all so much. Like, it was such a gift to sort of have this hour-long conversation, and really looking forward to keeping in touch. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thanks for initiating this.
You all for it.